shift the perception from negative to positive. So that's the kind of algorithms or science, if you will, that we're trying to create and engineer to bring about a positive relationship between the West and the Muslim world, of which the Cordoba House project is one of them.
It's definitely very exciting, Imam Feisal, and I urge you all, inshallah, there will be book signing after the lecture tonight, and I urge you to look at the book. It's very good. If I may have a last question before we open it, inshallah, for everybody. I think many of us came to know you after the so-called Ground Zero Mosque and all the attacks that you received there. I think a lot of us here can relate to that because we went through a very similar exercise by bringing this building, and subhanAllah, even though it was very difficult, it helped us as a community to really build relationships, kind of break out of the bubble that we were in as a Muslim community and many other Muslim communities are still in. I think it also helped us to reach out and realize that as communities we need each other. There is no one organization or one person can do everything without. So there's a lot of lessons that we learned. I'd like you to share with us some of the critical moments and some of the lessons that you learned and that you'd like to share with us as a community related to the experience that you had the last year, inshallah.
Well, I think I have more to learn from you than you have to learn from me on this particular issue. You've gone through it, you've been far more, you've taken the process far much further than we have. So I feel humbled by that question. But what I'd like to share with you in terms of what this thing did, what this experience taught me, were a number. First of all, that because of my proximity, and my masjid is like 12 blocks from Ground Zero. This has shaped a certain part of my own definition or the way people perceive me, for better or worse. I seem to be branded by my proximity to the World Trade Center. And the other thing that I have learned also, because of my work in the Cordoba State and work overseas and following the perception of issues from the Muslim world, this subject became, from a local community issue, became a national discussion issue because of the midterm politics that happened. In addition to those who are opposed to your project, this was also a time of the Tea Party. This was post-President Obama, who was the first African-American president, whose middle name is Hussein, and his father was a Muslim. And therefore, a very strong component of the animosity towards us was really an animosity targeted towards President Obama. And to the extent that Obama is a Democrat, there was a certain amount of Republican-Democrat politics that also went on in the animosity towards us, which was something which I think we experienced that may have been different from your experience. Yours was pure anti-Islam sentiment. Ours was a combination of politicized domestic politics, midterm elections, and it was synergized with Islamophobic tendencies. What I discovered was the importance, because my work is about bridging US-Muslim relations. I also have people and friends and associates who are watching perceptions in the Arab-Muslim world. As this subject began to grow, and although we call the Cordoba House, Park 51, to show this is actually a center for everybody. It's not a mosque, it's a YMCA type thing where everybody could be part of and be a member of. They branded it as the Ground Zero Mosque, the Ground Zero, the 13-story Ground Zero mega mosque. So we didn't like this branding because this branding was designed to aggravate the hostility and Islamophobic tendencies in America. Now, what I discovered in my tour to the Arab and Muslim world is that branding had the exact opposite effect in the Muslim world. You know, a Ground Zero mosque to the Muslim world was like a shocking thing. A 13-story ground, they don't know Ground Zero from 2 blocks from Ground Zero. People in Oklahoma don't know it, people in the Arab world don't even know it more. They don't even know Manhattan from New York City. They don't know these things, all right? So what, a ground zero mega mosque supported by a Jewish mayor of the largest Jewish city in the world? I mean, this was something that was like, I mean, they couldn't believe it. And they said, but as I tell many audiences, it raised the stock value of America. And then the President of the United States supported. A friend of mine, when the President Obama gave his iftar speech in the White House supporting our project, the next day, the banner headline of the Egyptian Gazette, the English Egyptian newspaper, printed in English, was Obama supports GZ Mosque. Okay, that was the banner headline. And when I was in Bahrain, you know, the Crown Prince knew I was there. The U.S. Embassy got a call saying that the Crown Prince wants to meet you. Graduate from American University. I went to him to visit him, the Charge d'Affaires. He was so excited. He said, you know, have you watched Keith Olbermann? I wouldn't even watch Keith Olbermann, you know. I was like in my midst of this crisis. He said, he's 12 minutes supporting you. You can't watch it. It's great. So I saw the excitement that this issue created to people in the Muslim world, from the top level to the bottom level. And also in my discussion with other heads of governments, I discovered that the concern that they had, because this aroused Islamophobia in this country. And when Sarah Palin suggested the Pastor Terry Jones was threatening to burn the Quran, maybe we should agree to not burn the Quran if we agreed to move, which put us into a hostage crisis situation, dynamic. It became very, very explosive that there were phone calls from heads of governments in the Muslim world to our administration at the highest levels, which resulted in pressures upon Terry Jones not to burn the Quran because it would have created massive demonstrations. In addition to the concern that people in the Muslim world have and Muslim governments have about Islamophobia here, because it creates animosity towards not only the United States, it also impacts the important interests which many of these governments have. Because they want to have trade, they want to be able to buy, you know, things from the United States, they want to sell things in the United States. So, and more Islamophobia in this country exists, the more America will have difficulty in engaging with the Muslim world on issues which the Muslim world wants to engage well with. So I discovered that our stories here, whether it's in our small mosque in downtown Manhattan or your mosque here, the story of Islam in America and how America is going to engage with Islam both domestically and internationally is a subject of major concern. And we are the players. We are the ones. And there's no doubt in my mind that we are actually achieving something of importance. And that I personally believe that we're now achieving a turning point. And to me, the marker of that turning point was when Obama, in the State of the Union speech, said, in spite of what extremists are trying to inspire on our shores of acts of terrorism, we are committed to the rule of law and to the conviction that American Muslims are Americans too. I was like, wow, he actually said that. And what amazed me even more was when he got a standing ovation to that statement from both sides of the House, Republican and Democrat. I said, that, when the history of Islam is written, that may be possibly the turning point. I mean, these things are bottomed out. Now they have to better improve. And that, of course, depends upon people, like good people like yourself, Feisal, who will carry the ball further.
Jazakumullah khair. I think this puts a huge responsibility on all of us, inshallah, so that we can meet Allah's expectation, Islam's expectation, also meet the expectation that we have of ourselves as American Muslims to contribute here to our country. Inshallah, with that, we will take a couple of minutes for the adhan. So inshallah, if somebody will make the Isha adhan, and then we will open it for questions for about 20 minutes or half hour, and then we will pray Isha in Jama'ah, inshallah. So inshallah, we'll do the question answer. We're going to do this a little bit in a dynamic way so that we can take as many questions as possible. If you have a question, please come up either here or here to ask a question. We're going to take 3 questions at a time, and I will hold the microphone so to make sure that the question will be 30 seconds or less. So inshallah, if you have a question, come up here for brothers and sisters, and we'll take 3 at a time. Actually, we'll take 3 here and 3 there. How is that? To make it easier, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. It's nice to meet you, Imam Rauf. I saw you on TV. It's good to see you in person.
Thank you. Do I look better in person or on TV?
Very intelligent. Very intelligent. But I do support the mosque being built. And I got 2 questions actually, but I think you can address them. But I do understand that the media portrays Muslims as Islamic extremism. But how is it that we as a Muslim community can bring about the modern voice of Islam to America? And do you think it is a good idea? Because I know it's the economic situation that will always bring about violence, while they say it's the religious ideology that will bring about violence. But the economic imbalance with the Muslim community, especially those in Palestine, do you believe that one day the Islamic currency would become one Islamic currency? Would that make it good for the imbalance of economic progress for the people of Palestine and the Muslim community if there was one Islamic currency and that would include the people of Palestine?
Thank you. Good question. So Imam Feisal, we'll take a couple and then we'll come back to you, inshallah. If you'd like to share your name, this way we also know each other, that would be great.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Muhammad Siddiqui. Imam, I want to thank you. That was a very intellectually stimulating discussion. My question is, the memory is very short here, and there was a time 6 months ago when everybody was talking about the New York mosque, your mosque. Where does that...
Come up here away from this, I think this is...
Yes, feedback.
My question is, where does that stand, and if you can give us an update on the current status, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tahir Chaudhry. My question has to do with, you have been here 45 years, and I think a bunch of us in this audience, probably a decade or more. I have been 20 years, 20 in Europe and so on. My question to you is, where do you think, how do you think we are making progress in various things that we should be doing in the society? Some examples of that are interfaith work, for example, political work, and other social involvement that we should have. Are we doing enough? What should we do if we're not doing enough? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So inshallah we'll answer these. Also, if you would like to have a written question, somebody will be coming around collecting them, or you can bring them here. Sister here will be coming. So bring them here, inshallah. Imam Feisal?
Certainly. Well, let me just take them not in exact order. As far as the involvement of the project, the downtown center is concerned, this dream is a dream that I've had for over 15 years, 20 years. To have a space which will be like a YMCA type project, a project that will be a center that really everybody feels participating in, for a multiplicity of reasons. The reasons that have to do, as I said, with not only integrating Muslims into the larger societies, integrating themselves within each other, and creating and evolving what I call among that generation which feels itself increasingly American and needs to be American, to have a sense of who they are as American Muslims, and then to integrate that with the larger society, which is very important. And that dream is still alive. Whether it's going to happen in this particular location or another location, it's still a work in progress, and we hope that you will have some news in the next few months. But the more important issue is what happened. What happened, why did it happen, and what is the broader question? The broader question, as I said, is how will America engage with Islam domestically and internationally? And they're not firewalled from each other. During the Peter King trials, I was asked by the media, I was on the Journal show, I think last week, and I said that the notion that homegrown terrorism is firewalled from international terrorism is a myth. It's absurd, it's false. The Times Square bomber who wanted, was not radicalized in our mosques. He went back to Pakistan, was radicalized there. Many of our young are radicalized by international blogs or websites. So we have to do a multiplicity of things, and certainly we have to address the issue of homegrown terrorism, etc. But these are the issues that we need to do to address in terms of engaging with the larger community, because that's the real issue that was raised. The real estate is not the issue. The issue is the broader issue. Islamophobia in this country, relationships between Muslims and Americans, relationships in the American Muslim world. These are the big questions that we have to address. And therefore, what pleased us very much is if you examine the media coverage on our story, it was the right-wing media that was against us. You know, Fox News, the Rupert Murdoch, complex of like the New York Post, etc. But the New York Times was supportive, CNN was supportive, MSNBC was supportive. Professor Diana Eck, who is here, is supportive. Head of the Harvard Divinity School. And many pluralism project and all kinds of wonderful things, but it was a battle between many things, and there is a battle. And the important things I've said again is that the real battlefront is not between Islam and America or between Jews and Muslims. The war is between the moderates of all the faith traditions and all the nationalities together against the extremists of all the faith traditions. Because it's the extremists who fuel each other. Some radical imam or somebody, Ayatollah says, Marga America, death to America. Americans get scared of, this religion that is saying death to America. So some American colonel says this Islam is an evil religion. Then a person gets upset in Pakistan, they start attacking American interests. And then, Danish newspaper commissions cartoons against the Prophet. People in the Muslim world start demonstrating, saying this is disrespectful. So people in the West say, oh, this is an attack against freedom of the press, so now we have to protect freedom of the press. Let's publish even more cartoons. So now the French and the Swedes publish worse cartoons, more insulting cartoons. People in Libya start, demonstrating and attacking Western interests. And the discourse just goes crazy and crazy until you have a pastor threatening to burn the Quran. So the extremists are actually all of the same mindset, of the same attitude, and they fuel each other. They don't maybe know it, but they need each other. Because if they don't have the extremists on the other side, then, as we say in Arabic, one hand cannot clap. You need two hands to clap. So they're making a lot of noise, these extremists. So we moderates have to be passionately moderate, because we're ummatan wasata. We have to really, and there are moderates on every side. There are moderate Jews who will work with us, moderate Christians, moderate evangelicals, moderate Americans, moderate Israelis, who want the same things. So we have to build a coalition of moderates against all of those. That's the important work that we have to do. Now, the idea of an Islamic currency, I think, is not possible. I'm not a financial expert. Whatever I've learned of the nature of money has taught me that money is no longer gold. At one time, money was gold, silver, jewelry, land, camels and sheep and cattle, horses. But today, wealth is numbers in an account. And the reason why is because there's not enough gold and silver in the world to manage the growth in wealth. Because the growth in wealth in the world has been growing so rapidly over the last century that's why we have to go off of a gold standard. I could give a whole lecture on this, but I don't have enough time for this. But because if you have a certain amount of money supply, and the money supply doesn't grow with the growth in wealth, what happens is you have deflation. You have to recalibrate your unit of currency. So it creates, you reach a point where you have to grow your money supply with the growth of wealth. And the only way you can do this is to have money being something which is created. But this creates a whole other set of problems, which is why the United States can create fiat money and dump its inflation on other countries, which is why other countries sometimes get very upset. But this is a whole other issue on economics and finance, but we can do that another time. But the short answer is, I don't think a currency that way. However, having said that, the Muslim world has a lot of wealth. A lot of wealth. The sovereign funds of countries like Abu Dhabi and, many of these nations. And there certainly will be the ability to deploy your wealth in a way that amplifies your geopolitical concerns is certainly something that we should do, if that's where the question was going to. Have we done enough on interfaith? No, we haven't. We need to do more. And there's a lot more area, especially this issue of building coalition of moderates around the issues which are important. To study each other's religions, as well as to work together on the issues which are important to us.
Any questions from the sisters?
Yes,
sisters
we have
to come up here.
and stand.
I do have 4 written questions from the sisters, but if anybody would like to come and ask.
You know, we're always accused that we oppress our women, and we don't know how we get beat up by our women, you know, in our homes.
Please.
Takbir. Assalamu alaikum. It's good to see you in Boston. We always watch you on TV. My question was, what's your take on Peter King with his agenda, hearings after hearings on amplifying Islamophobia, on radicalization of Muslims in mosques? How do we react to it? How, as American Muslims, what do you think we should do?
If I may add a couple more from the sisters that I have here written, Imam Feisal.
Sure.
And feel free, I know you don't have papers, so if you'd like to use this, please.
Well, I can just take the papers from you after you read them.
Sure. This is the Peter King one, so I can. Dearest Imam, do you have any advice for a young Muslim trying to change the stereotypes currently facing Islam and Muslims without losing their identities or their deen? If you can give us some example. The other question also, I think, related, how should we respond to groups trying to prevent Muslims from integrating and wanting us to be always seen as outsiders or feared? And the last question, I think, within the same vein, a sister is asking, saying that any critique of Jews is called anti-Semitic, any negative depiction of blacks is racist, any negative depiction of women is called sexist, yet it seems that it's open season on Islam and Muslims for the hatred against the Prophet and the Quran. And people claim they have the right to criticize Islam and make fun of it. How do we deal with this?
Excellent. I think I've answered in part the Peter King question before by saying that we have to be concerned about radicalization of our faith. I mean, I've seen my faith get so politicized over the last 50 years. When I grew up, religion was what you practiced. Now it's become a political ideology. And it's very important for us, part of what we have to do is to depoliticize our religion. Our religion has become way too politicized. We need to work with the law enforcement agencies, which I myself did, and many people of us I know in New York, I did, in Said in the Chicago area. We worked with the law enforcement agencies to make sure that no radicalization and no acts of extremism come from our mosques. This is very important to do. And we are concerned about those issues. The concerns which many people had about the Peter King hearings was that there was a sense that it was done in such a way that tended to advance the impression that all of us are radicals. And not enough attention was given to showing the cooperation that we've had with the law enforcement agencies. He refused to have the FBI and other law enforcement people testify, which we thought would have been an important thing, because it's important for the perception to begin to be separated, that Islam is not the enemy, that extremism is the enemy. And you do this by how you message the issues. This is the issue that we had with that. The issue of integrating. I think this has been what I'm talking about. We have to work on becoming American Muslims. This is what I say in my book. We have to start changing from being Muslims in America to being American Muslims. And a very effective way of doing that is just getting to know people. Polls have shown that the approval rating of Islam among people who know a Muslim is twice that who don't know a Muslim. So just by getting to know each other, people you know, get to like you. And invite people to your homes, you know. Our food is the easiest thing they are attracted to. I mean, you know, a great dish of couscous, or I mean, sopo de kanja if you're from West Africa, or you know, a great, you know, biryani. I mean, I told you that I conducted a wedding a couple of years ago for a young couple. The young man was from an Italian-American background, and his wife was, I think, Indian or Pakistani. And when he talked about his mother-in-law's biryani, his eyes twinkled, that I felt that his love for his wife and the culture of his wife. You know, when you fall in love with somebody, you don't think of them the same way. When a white woman falls in love with a black man, there's no more racism in her. And vice versa. When a Muslim boy falls in love with a Jewish girl, there's no more anti-Jewish sentiment left. And vice versa. When you love a person, you love everything about their culture. You love everything about them. Even the things which aren't right, you love them also. This is the story of, you know, the story of Layla and Majnun. Majnun was in love with Layla, so that when he would follow her, pardon the expression, but he would know the camel droppings from her camel would remind him of her, so he would talk poetry about her. So the idea is friendship and love creates very powerful bonds.
You're making it hard for the brothers like this, Imam Feisal.
I'm just saying that, you know, when you love a culture, you love everything, but love has many faces. Getting to know them. This is what the Ta'aruf is all about. Our book commands us, saying that, you know, we create different brands, the Ta'arafu, to get to know each other. So don't be ghettoized. Get to know people and love them. And you know what? You change stereotypes by being relaxed about yourselves. We Muslims are uptight. We're too uptight. We are so rigid about things. Why be rigid about these things? And you know, I was asked not too long ago on the Jon Stewart show, on the Daily Show, do we need a Muslim Cosby show? I think it's great to have a Muslim. We have to stop making fun of ourselves. If we can't laugh at ourselves and let others laugh with us, and that would be a very effective way of releasing the tension. And boy, we've got a lot of tension to it.
10 minutes. 5. Right, we'll pray 5 minutes, inshallah. We'll take one more set of questions, inshallah. If you would introduce yourself.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Ayhan Banasi. When I was watching the media's coverage on this, one of the points that really struck me as a Muslim American was this argument. Yes, we have the constitutional right, but we shouldn't exercise that right due to the sensibilities of Americans. And of course you're talking about American Islam, and we should be mindful of American thinking. How far do you take it? I guess is my question. How far do you take this, reconciling the two? And then a lot of my non-Muslim friends tell me that it may have been a missed opportunity for us to show that that as Americans we can take one for the team, that we can, if we were to find an outlet. What is the appropriate response to people who think that way?
Good question.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, my brother, for being here. My name is Magesek. I'm originally from Senegal, but I've been living in Boston now for 35 years.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was among the people actually struggling to secure this land when I was a student here. 35 years later, I am a professor here in Boston. I couldn't be happier than to have you here today.
Thank you, sir.
I have your book, and I started reading your book.
Thank you.
And as I was sitting there, there was in the preface by Karen Armstrong, who actually talked about something very, very deep. She said that one of the British men who went to France, and when she went to France, he found Muslims but did not found Islam. And then he went to Egypt and found Islam but could not find Muslims. Meaning that there is this big, deep and profound complexity within the religion itself, which you are helping through the education, through advocacy, through the use of the media to help people understand that complexity. My question to you is, with the Cordoba that you have, will you be able to help America even more by extending it to other states, so people not only will understand Islam, but people will also reject anything that has to do with Islamophobia and particularly xenophobia? Because Muslims have not only that xenophobic tendency to fight, but we the Muslims also, we come from so many places, and xenophobic is in the head of foreigners. When it goes with the head of Islam, it becomes deep. And thank you for the great work you're doing. Peace.
Thank you. Peace to you too.
Charles Strohmeyer. I'm an American Muslim convert, and I haven't been able to find a good answer to this question. You mentioned America's a superpower, but so is China. And they're a surplus nation, whereas the world's democracies on average have astronomical debt, and it's growing exponentially. The Quran forbids riba 3 times and says that every nation has a finite duration. How do we know that these democracies, which are, I would argue, are corporate oligarchies, aren't just going to end in self-fueled demise due to the massive debt burden?
Since this is the last round, I want to see if there are any more sisters, because we're going to be praying after that. We have anyone would like to ask? Anybody would like to ask on the mic? And I think this is an announcement that on Sunday at 11 a.m. Imam Feisal will be speaking in the morning service at Memorial Church in Harvard Yard in Harvard University. And of course everybody is welcome to come, inshallah. I also would like to say on the Peter King note, I want to extend a note of appreciation to many of our interfaith partners who are here today, including our good friend Mike Felsen from Workman Circle, who signed a letter that was sent to all the congressmen in Massachusetts as well as Peter King in denunciation of these hearings. And I think these types of relationships are very important for the Muslim community. So we'll take one question.
Sorted our eardrums.
Hi, my name is Basil Solomon, and you mentioned that the Muslim community as a whole needs to become more Americanized. And well, I kind of, the way I think about it is I don't really think of myself as, I already think of myself as American, so I already feel Americanized, and I'm not sure if I'm just ahead of the rest of the community or not. And well, as an individual, I've always reached out to other people. I've had Jewish friends, atheist friends, Christians, So how can I basically reconnect with the Muslim community that may need my help? And how can I, as an individual, help combat Islamophobia? I think most people, when they have an idea about Islam, a negative idea about Islam, they're not really willing to change their minds. I read a lot of blogs, and I hear people's opinions about articles, and they're pretty firm on it. They just want to argue, and I don't think that arguing is actually helpful in that respect. So, what type of things that I can do as an individual to help with those two things?
Okay, sure. The issue about we had a constitutional right, but it was not sensitive, was the only way they could try to attack us. It was really about emotion, because that was the only thing that they could whip up. We had a constitutional right, we had the political support, we had the architectural right, I mean any right you want to call it, we had. But the way that this was the way that the opposition did it, and it was it a missed opportunity? Here was the problem. The problem, we had support. I was torn. I had enormous lobbies against me, and the question was, whatever I did, you know, you'd be damned if you do, damned if you don't. This famous American expression, and that's exactly where I was. Those who were supporters said, listen, if you agree to move, you will have betrayed your supporters. You know, how can you do this, especially when it became so ideological and political? And there were so many factors to be calculated in this. And I also said to people privately and even later publicly, no one has ever already offered me anything. You know, people say, if you agree to move, and people say, well, don't just say you're moving before somebody gives you a pledge that you have something else, because people will promise you the world in a time of crisis, and you know what happens, even doctors don't get paid, you know, if they don't charge you the moment your tooth is already out to be pulled. You don't pay your bills even. So people will not really. So these were all the issues that I had to deal with. But again, the concern that I have and the sensitivity that I have to the issues of concern about Islam is very important. But I always say there's a broader issue here. There's a broader issue here. And when I was discussing I was having major discussions with the State Department. Should I do my trip? Should I not do my trip? You know what they told me? They said, if you don't go on the trip, they will say, they will not stop there. They'll say, aha, they found something about Islam. Now let's find out what this is. Okay? It's not about the issue of going or not going. It is just plain hatred, and you cannot give in to hatred. We have to make a stand for an American value that Americans believe in. And now we have to, there comes a point when you just have to draw the line in the sand and say, you know what? There's certain principles that we must stand for as Americans, for the sake of America, not for the sake of Muslims alone. Your comment about Sheikh Abdul was an important one about you know, when he went to France and he said he found Islam but no Muslims, and he came back to Egypt. He was the chief mufti and Sheikh al-Azhar of Egypt, and he said he finds Muslims but no Islam. This is a profound statement, as you've said. It means, you know what? It doesn't matter what you call yourself. It's how you behave. You don't have to be, you know, there's this old expression, you don't have to be Jewish to love rye bread. You don't have to be a Muslim to believe like a real believer. And if the real, I mean, I don't take pride in being a Muslim, if you read the Quran. Because the Prophet, when the nomads said, قَاتَلْ الْأَعْرَابُ آمَنَّا قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا وَلَكِنْ قُلُوا أَسْلَمْنَا فَلَمَّا يَدْخُلُ الْإِيمَانَ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. The nomadic Arabs said, we have become believers. And Allah says to tell them, no, you have not yet become believers. You can say you are Muslims, because Iman has not penetrated into your hearts. I believe that our standard is really, our threshold level is to be believers. And if you're a Muslim, you're a probationary mu'min. To be a probationary mu'min is not really to be, you know, it's not where it's at. We have to be mu'mins and to be muhsins as well. This is the demand of our religion. And to be satisfied and complacent and to say, hey, we're Muslims, you got to accept us as Muslims. You know what? Allah doesn't even consider that acceptable. It's acceptable, yes, but He has a demand that we be believers, we be muhsins, because that's what Sheikh Abdul is talking about. And if we do not exemplify the best behavior of what it means to be a believer, who care for everybody, I mean, we all know this ahadith of the Prophet who had a Jewish neighbor who used to, because they didn't have sewage at that time of the Prophet, they used to throw their garbage, you know, on the street. He would throw it when the Prophet would come out. And well, how did the Prophet treat him when he was sick and couldn't throw his garbage out? He went to visit him. How many of us would do that? This is the sunnah of the Prophet, that if we exhibit that kind of behavior, taking care of our fellow neighbors, whether they're Jews or Christians or whatever, I guarantee you Islam would improve. And as to how the issue of democracies and debt burdens, this is why in my book I talk about democratic capitalism, but we need as Muslims to develop an Islamic democratic capitalism. This is the unfinished business of our world today. A democratic capitalism that makes sure that capital is not used in a predatory fashion. Because that's, to me, what usury is really about. The provision against usury is that capital is not used in a predatory fashion, that the capital owners and the labor providers both have their rights in a proper balance. Thank you very much for your patience. I understand you have another program after that, so I thank you for listening to me, and if I have said anything to offend anyone, please forgive me. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.